In this part of our documentary about Paula White, we will be discussing her personal life, her 3 marriages, her 2 divorces. Here's an excerpt from Paula White's autobiography. Paula White got married in March of 1985 to her first husband, Dean Knight, and Paula was pregnant at the time. They decided to make a go of it and try to make a family, and she later gave birth to her only child, Brad, who is now married and has 2 children of his own, and he is now pastoring her church in Apopka, Florida, now that Paula's working at the White House. But Paula moved out from Dean in 1988, and it says here that she went to live in her mother's basement. Here's the judgment of absolute divorce from Dean, and that happened in October 1989. You can also see here that they were separated in 1988. Here's something interesting. Center Industries of Maryland is a Maryland domestic LLC filed in 2016. That is a business of her ex-husband, Dean Knight. Now, why is this important? Because here you have Paula in our next document. Paula White lent Dean in 2017. She lent him $1.4 million. Very interesting. Very, very interesting that you would lend your ex-husband that kind of money. I guess. I think Dean probably had some information on Paula that she didn't want to get out. So you have to keep your friends close, amen, especially ex-husbands, when you know that you're going to be working for the future president of the United States. So how do we know? How do we know about all these documents, you might ask? Well, Paula was going to sue Shirley Johnson, who has a YouTube channel called The Remnants JNJ. Shirley put up so many videos about Paula and exposing Paula for being a liar and a fraud. And Paula didn't like the fact that Shirley had this channel, so she decided she was going to sue Shirley for $10 million. Yeah, $10 million. And it did cause her emotional harm, absolutely, because she was worried about, where am I going to get the money to fight this lawsuit? What if this woman wins? Because she's got money, she's got attorneys. And so then the case was later dropped, but the judge told Shirley to sue Paula for malicious prosecution, which it was malicious. It was wrong. It was evil to do that to somebody. And after all, the videos that Shirley put up were mainly of Paula talking herself. So she wasn't slandering Paula or defaming her in any way. And so Shirley won the case, and she received this judgment. And of course, when you sue somebody like Paula did, the court requires discovery. So Paula had to hand over all her financial information, which she never thought was going to go public because it was sealed by the court. But after the case was settled and Shirley won the case, the Washington Post found out about it and the Trinity Foundation found out about it, and they requested that the documents be unsealed, which they were. So that's the reason why I have all of Paula's tax returns for 3 years. I have all these documents. There was hundreds of pages of documents, canceled checks, and all kinds of things. So that's why I'm able to show you these documents. And they're a treasure trove of information. You can run, but you can't hide. In Paula's autobiography, Something Greater, she says that they had physical intimacy between her and Randy. They had a rocky start, but when we marry, we will be truly repentant for what we have done, our former actions. So they were having a sexual affair before they got married in 1990. And she says, "Yet there is nothing I can justify. Sin is sin, and I simply have to take ownership of it." And Randy was married with 3 children, and she was married with 1 child, and they divorced their spouses, and then they took off to Tampa soon after. They got married, and they became pastors later on of Without Walls.
I remember also that I was working for the State Department at that time. Paula at that time was a receptionist at a urologist, and we had just gotten married.
They later became very, very wealthy. They bought this condo in New York City for $3.5 million. It was paid off completely in 2019, even though they were divorced. They've been divorced since 2007. They were married for 17 years. That was the house, one of the houses they lived in Tampa, which Randy lost after the divorce in a foreclosure. He couldn't pay his mortgage. Even after, look, all these years, they took in 2004, $16 million in tithes, $23 million in 2005, $35 million in 2006. They were taking in millions and millions and millions of dollars, yet they couldn't pay their bills. Terrible money management. There is the bankruptcy case if you wanted to look it up in the Hillsborough County Court, 60 pages. They owed their creditors $26 million, and this was filed in 2014. So no matter what Paula says, she had a part in not paying the bills. They didn't pay. Here was another lawsuit. They owed the Meyer Clinic, where Randy went for help with. They owed $90,000. They owed a Trump debt of $16,000. They owed 2 Gulfstream jet debts for. And here's another document where it shows, I think this is from 2017, where Paula forgave a debt of Randy's for $513,000. Of course, Randy knows a lot of secrets. This is the church that Randy met in. I actually visited this church a few times to see what was going on. That was the church he met at after Without Walls was bulldozed. And here he is giving Jonathan Cain advice, saying that he's praying for him, and you will know why later. I wonder what that was all about. There's a picture of Randy from about, I think, 2018. He was really falling apart. 2011, he was arrested for drunk driving. That's his mugshot. That's a picture of Without Walls before it was bulldozed in Tampa. Their administration building, which was also bulldozed. And there's Randy in sad shape.
There we go.
Later on.
Without Walls is Without Walls. They have torn it down. Here's the old admin building, as you can see in the background. But I just arrived, and it is May 29th, 2015. And as you can see, the bulldozers are here, and they have bulldozed the place. It is no more.
I said to someone, and I was corrected the second time, and I heard it. It took 2 times. But I said, you know, when I came here, after about a year, the Lord told me resign Without Walls. Because I was pastoring there and pastoring here, and I was both, and the Lord spoke to me very clearly, used Brad for confirmation and one other person, and God said, resign. And you have, that was almost $80 million worth of buildings and TV studio and equipment, and Vicki, it's so good to have you here, and so many other things, and God said, resign it. And so I was saying to someone, I left Without Walls, and I said, you know, that meant my retirement. I mean, they said, you didn't leave anything. I said, you sowed it. I said, that was a seed. You aren't hearing what I'm saying. I said, that was just a sacrifice you laid down on the altar. Oh, if you're only hearing what I'm saying right now, because some of you think, well, I left this, but you didn't leave anything. That was just a seed that you planted. And so if that was my seed, what's the harvest of what God's
You can't be asking where $100 went. Okay? Look, I would not sit under a man that I could not trust with my money. I wouldn't sit under. I wouldn't. If you can't trust me with that, then there's a lot of great churches.
Police arrested the former pastor of Without Walls International Church for driving under the influence. Officers stopped Randy White around 11:30 last night at the Ashley Street ramp off of Interstate 275. White's blood alcohol count was listed as 0.9.3 and 0.095 on jail records. That's above the legal limit of 0.08. White was released on $500 bail this morning.
The church board member says he was surprised when a 2006 audit reported the church had $26 million in debt, even though it brought in $35 million that year.
Both the Tampa Church and its Lakeland campus have a lot of debts to settle in this rebuilding process. Between the two, Without Walls owes $22 million in mortgage debt and another $350,000 in bills and repairs.
The church is in a terrible financial position. They could examine everything they want right now. There's not any money in the banks. There's no savings account. It's just gone. Everything's gone.
Even after all that, even after Randy says there's nothing left and the place is bankrupt and the places are going into foreclosure, when Paula White goes over to her new church, New Destiny in Apopka, she tells the people that she left behind, she sacrificed to come there, and she left behind $80 million in buildings and assets. Paula White can't stop lying.
And one other person, and God said, resign. And you have, that was almost $80 million worth of buildings and TV studio and equipment. And Vicki, it's so good to have you here, and so many other things. And God said, resign it. And so I was saying to someone, I left Without Walls, and I said, you know, that meant my retirement. I mean, they said, you didn't leave anything. Said, you sowed it. Said, that was a seed. You aren't hearing what I'm saying. Said, that was just a sacrifice you laid down on the altar.
He may be retired, but I'm about to resurrect it. Just a minute, I'm submitting to you, but I just want to tell you what happened. So I'm walking.